What's up, Zero to Here podcast fans? Welcome back to the show. On tonight's podcast, head brewer from Steel Oak. This is a big one, obviously, because you know I love beer. Eric Moutal. Sorry, Eric, I love you. Not sure how to pronounce your last name. He's a good dude. I really enjoy this guy. He's been working at Steel Oak since the beginning. He was the assistant brewer for the first 2 or 3 years, took over 2 years ago, and has absolutely crushed it. If you haven't had a Steel Oak beer in the last couple of years, you need to check these guys out because they are legit. Seriously, so many good beers, Carl. I love what they're up to right now. They are basically doing a lot of one batch things, which is kind of up my alley because I like trying new beers. And every couple weeks when they have a new beer, it's just an excuse to drink more beer. They've been doing a lot of hazies, which is right up my alley, as you guys know. And last week they came out with a wicked nitro stout called Sleepwalkers, which is dynamite. Carl, if you haven't had it. He kind of goes into everything from like trends in beer, how seems like every year or two the trend is different, and there's a little bit of pressure on brewers to produce like a good sour or a good IPA or a good hazy. I asked him about collabs because it seems like that is a big thing in Greater Vancouver. Couple breweries getting together and producing a wicked awesome beer, and how that whole situation comes about. And then just the behind the scenes of what the day-to-day looks like in a brewery. Who comes up with the recipes, what goes into brewing a phenomenal beer, where the names come from, all of that. He is a very interesting dude and makes a lot of good beer. So have a listen. Let me know what you think. As always, I want to hear your feedback. So if you like what you are hearing on the Zero to Hero podcast, hit the subscribe button and leave us a review. Later. Oh. Tonight on the Zero to Hero podcast, beach towel brought to you by Steel Oak. That is correct. I am going to sit here with my beer can for the next 45 to 60 minutes.
So graceful.
And you guys are going to... No, I'm just kidding. We are... this is a very exciting day for us, Carl. We are going to be chatting with the gentleman who produces this lovely nectar of the gods and puts it in these cans. Eric, welcome to the show.
Hello.
I'm excited, man. I obviously I'm a big fan of Steel Oak, but with no disrespect to Peter, because I have a lot of respect for what he did for the brand as well. But Steel Oak has got super good in the last 2 years.
Thanks. Yeah.
So
I mean, I'm going to say it was always good. We've changed.
I agree that it was good, and I'm probably up there in terms of one of the biggest fans of Steel Oak that you guys have. But I think it's got really good in the last couple of years, and I drink a lot of craft beer, probably more than I care to admit on this show. But you've had so much new stuff come out in the last 12 months, 24 months, that you have kind of been running the show. So congratulations.
Thanks.
As a beer fan, I'm pumped about it. I often get samples, which is great. I often spend a lot of money in the tasting room, which is good for you guys. Not good for my beer gut. But I love the stuff. How long have you been involved or running Steel Oak?
So I've been involved with Steel Oak since the day we opened.
Were you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was in the tasting room. I poured you maybe your first beer there.
Did you?
Yeah. So I was there. I was hired. I just needed a summer job. Basically, I didn't think it would lead to this, and I was hired the day we opened. I started my first shift, poured probably one of the first beers. I don't know exactly, and with the thought that, you know what, if it gets busy, Peter, the original brewmaster, was running the show by himself, and I don't think he quite realized how busy it would get. But I was hired with the thought that if it did get busy, then maybe I'd help out in the back. And within a week, Jamie came up to me and was just one of the owners of Steel and Oak and was just, do you want some extra shifts? Gonna need some help. And I was washing kegs within a week or so. And so starting just cleaning kegs and whatever else. Brewing is mostly cleaning, as you'll find out. So that's what I was doing while somebody else did the actual brewing. And yeah, and then it kind of led to this. And now it's been just over 3 years that I've been the head brewer. Pete moved on to other stuff. That was his plan all along. Mm-hmm. And somehow they trusted me to take over. I didn't know what I was doing. I faked it for a while, and I kind of know and think we all figure it out as we go. But yeah, so it's been just over 3 years. So it's been great.
I want to get into a little bit more about like the science behind brewing beer and how a facility like Steel and Oak is actually run day to day. I want to talk about all the wicked beers that you guys have put out in the last couple of years. First of all, I'm pumped that our relationship is going to go to a new level tonight because Eric and I know each other by literally just me coming into the brewery and be like, "Hey, Eric, what's going on?" He's like, "Hey, how's it going?"
Well, your office used to be at Steel and Oak, so I used to see you more often.
That's true.
And then
it was too hot in there.
Yeah, it was a terrible place to work. I don't know why anybody would choose to be there. But other than that, it's good. So yeah, he used to come by more often.
First, I want you to tell us what we're drinking right now, Arlo.
This is it's being released tomorrow, so you're the first of the general public to try it.
Tomorrow is what? Tuesday, July 20. What is it called? 23rd. All right.
Yeah. So this is Beach Towel, an IPA India Pale Ale with guava, mango, and passion fruit. It's summer. We want to drink IPA. Well, people want to drink IPAs. People like fruit. People like tropical fruit.
Is it hazy?
It's hazy.
All right.
Yeah.
It's hard to see in the can. Tastes hazy.
Yeah. So it's fruity, but it's still an IPA. So it's not going to be the straight up juice that some people want or some people think they want. I'm not going to tell people what to drink, but I want it still to taste like beer. And so there's definitely fruit in there. You taste all the fruit, but it's still an IPA. It's still beer.
The name is wicked. Obviously, it's a summer beer. Who's in charge of these names?
Names are usually by committee. And then it's usually between my ideas normally just get rejected. So I don't even try anymore. I tell them what the beer is, let them do it.
What was your idea for the name for this one?
I probably didn't even have one. No, I don't even try anymore.
Flip flop.
I feel like that was part that went in the conversation. But usually Jordan, one of the owners, Kevin, who's marketing brand boss is what we call him, and Dan, who's our general manager. They kind of talk it out, usually more between Kevin and Dan, and then think of ideas, throw things out there, and eventually something comes out, and we're done. This one went through a few names that can't even remember what they were now, but we thought we had it, and then telling other people, they're like, "Really? Well, that's it." So I stay away from the marketing side of things. Let other people deal with it. They're better at it than I am.
As a guy who's in charge of the actual beer that goes in here, I'm assuming I know the answer to this question. How much does the name affect the saleability or how well a beer does on shelves?
I can't answer, but I'm sure it's a lot.
Yeah.
Like people, I mean, you're at a liquor store, there's, I don't know how many options there. You need a good name, a good label. Our designer, Sammy, does amazing work. And so that helps you just grab it off the shelf and then maybe take a little bit closer and read it. And hopefully that makes you buy it. And hopefully when my job is after you've done all that and somehow picked it up off the shelf, hopefully the beer is good enough that you want to buy it again.
So to clarify a little bit on what I said earlier, Steel Oak in the first 2 years, I feel like they had a very specific type of brewery that they wanted to be, German inspired.
Yeah.
And now it's just kind of grown into phenomenalness across the board. Yeah, that's a word, Carl. I looked it up before.
You come up with the viewers on these podcasts.
Thank you.
What was it?
Phenomenalness.
Write that one down.
Phenomenalness. Okay.
Phenomenalness. What, I guess, what is kind of the overall direction that you guys have gone in the last couple of years? Obviously, there's been a lot of hazies, which I'm a very big fan of, which it seems like a lot of Greater Vancouver is a big fan of. Is that I'm assuming that's like the big trend right now?
That's a huge one.
Yeah.
That's kind of where they're easy sells, and it makes me a little bit mad because you can put out an amazing beer, but it's just a lager. Takes a lot more effort to make a good lager, and you throw out an IPA. People don't care. They don't want to try it. They just want to buy it. And I think ours are good. Don't get me wrong, but it's almost frustrating that no matter what you throw out, if it's a hazy IPA, it's going to be bought. You know, when a new beer is released, the first comment on Instagram is always, "Is it hazy?" We never call it a hazy IPA, and you ask the same question.
Well, you can taste it, obviously.
Yeah. And I get that that's what some people like, but also some people, I think, it's not that they necessarily prefer that. It's just that that's what they think they should like. And so as soon as people know it's a hazy IPA, they're buying it. They're going to come in. People are like, I'm going to buy 2 flats. And they've never tried it. And so, I mean, I assume we have a good enough reputation that people assume it'll be good.
Obviously you do.
But they'll come in and not even want to have a taster of it. Whereas if it's any other style, even just a West Coast IPA that's not hazy, they'll maybe not buy as much. And we love it and think they'd like it too, but they just won't even give it a shot. And it's a little frustrating. But that being said, we're making beer for people. We're not making it for ourselves. We can't drink anywhere close to the amount that we make. So somebody else has to buy it. And so if somebody wants that, we are going to make it. We're not going to not make it. We're going to put our touch on it. So, for example, the hazies, I like them, and in general, people at the brewery like them a little bit more dry, less sweetness than some other breweries. And so that's kind of our thing. We'll make them more crushable, if you will, than other
Crushable.
breweries. Yeah.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Eric. It's on my list of things to talk to you about. And since you just brought it up, we might as well. There was something else I'm going to write it down so I don't forget. Are you offended by the term crushable? Because
No.
I've talked to multiple brewery people and also people that actually make the beer, not just market and sell the beer. And my takeaway is that the people that make the beer don't like the term crushable. For whatever reason, it takes away from the art of the beer. I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying?
No, beer's made for drinking.
I agree.
So that's, I love trying different beers, but I don't want a flight of beer. I want a beer. I don't want to taste 20 different beers. Just give me one beer that I know I'm going to like, and a couple others after, but a full beer. I mean, shotgunning might take away from the beer, that you're not tasting it at that point.
Yeah.
But I mean, my favorite beer that we make is our Pilsner, Simple Things Pilsner. And that is a crushable beer. I think it's really well made. It's got complexity if you're looking for it, but you're not generally looking for it. You're just cracking it open and drinking it. And that's what it's made for. And yeah, I'm all for crushable beers. And
I think that's one area of the beer spectrum that I'm going to use the word respect because nothing else is coming to mind, but I don't respect enough is the Pilsners. What about a Pilsner is so appealing? Because to me, it's blah. But again,
hopefully that'll change. So the market is going more towards lagers. Well, I hope partly because we've always done lagers, partly because I love them. So a Pilsner is the epitome of beer to me. So that's what I want. If I see a Pilsner on a menu, if I know it's going to be a decent Pilsner, I'm going to order it. And it's partly because I can judge other breweries based on it because it's one of the hardest styles to make.
Should we throw in a little plug there that you guys won the gold? Didn't you win a gold for
We won silver
Oh,
Yeah,
what
silver.
one? The dark lager one?
It
Gold?
was a different. Yeah, our dark lager
one
won
gold. Okay.
in
Simple
the
Things one
silver in
silver, okay.
yeah at the Canadian Beer Awards. Not against another Pilsner. I'll throw that out there.
What?
Because the category is, I could go on, but it got beat
Please go on.
by I believe it was some dark lager. Categories are weird in beer, so unless you're a beer nerd, you're probably not going to fully understand this. But it was entered in a Keller beer category, which is kind of a catch-all. It means cellar beer in German, and it's basically an unfiltered beer. That's a Pilsner is traditionally filtered, and it's crisp and clean, or crisp and bright in color. We don't filter any of our beers, so ours is a little bit hazy. I think it adds body. I think it makes it better. But it means it can't really go into a Pilsner category in awards. It needs to go into a more catch-all Keller beer category, which is just confusing. It doesn't really matter.
No, I'm very confused. But
Yeah,
I want to
exactly.
clarify. So why can't yours go into a Pilsner category?
Basically, because we don't filter it. We don't filter any of our beers, and by the book, a Pilsner should be filtered. If you go by the German brewing methods, they filter them. Ours,
So they would tell you that beer is not a Pilsner.
yeah, it's
What would they call it?
it would be a Keller Pilsner, which basically means an unfiltered version of a Pilsner, just straight from the cellar. So if you go to a brewery in Germany, they'll have their Pilsner that's filtered and packaged, or you can get their Keller Pilsner served straight from the tank. If you're at the brewery beer garden, you should go.
This is a complete side note. Do you have any pull in terms of who is on the board for judging these awards?
No.
If so, can you volunteer my name?
I mean, you could.
I
You could
can.
go. They're always looking for people. Usually they want people that are somehow qualified.
I have a friend that runs a brewery.
Qualified.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it's a stretch because it's hard to find. So there's a thing called a beer judge certification program, BJCP.
How do we sign up?
You can get you basically have to take a test that I think you just taste, you have to like study and then you taste beers. And if you can correctly judge things, and then you get a certificate. That being said, they often have a tough time finding enough people that are qualified. So they'll just get industry people. You don't want to judge a beer competition. It means you're just drinking a couple sips of 20 beers in a row, trying to find these little off flavors or try to judge it off a few sips. It doesn't sound like fun. I've never done it.
I feel like I'm pretty decisive though. So after 20, I just be like, I like that one.
Yeah. But you're not even judging what you like best. You're
Yeah.
judging it against a category.
Yeah,
So
see, I
like
would
the
not be
Pilsner
good at that.
category, is it the right bitterness for a Pilsner? It's not how you like it. It's, is it the right thing for this category? And so you can have an amazing beer, our red Pilsner. It's not really a Pilsner. We call it that. It has some qualities, but it's red. It's sweeter. It's got caramel notes. It doesn't fit into a category in judging. So it really doesn't win awards.
Is that a super old school way to talk about styles of beer? Are they judging based on like these really old school principles?
They update the categories every so often and depends on what competition, what categories they're using. It is, but also I can't think of a better way to judge it, because if it's just based on one or two people, well, which one do you like better?
Yeah.
Then it's not really, it's going to change whoever's judging. So they're trying to judge against a standard.
Yeah.
And then it's all about technical stuff. If there's an actual off flavor, then they're going to take points off of that. And
Do you think head brewers in breweries across Canada are looking at these standards and saying like, we're trying to produce a beer that's going to win a medal? Or are we trying to produce a beer that we enjoy and our customers are going to enjoy?
I think mostly
Because it seems like it's two different things.
awards, the average consumer doesn't know about awards.
It's just good for social media.
Yeah, it's good for social media. It's only good if we win, that's great. If we lose, well, there's too many things that make you lose. It can be, I mean, somebody's taking 2 sips of your beer. What do they have before that?
Exactly.
Like it's so good beers often will lose at awards. You rarely get bad beers winning, but it happens. And so if you win, it's great. If you lose, I'd rather see people enjoy it. If another brewer comes and tells me that they like the beer I brewed, that's better than winning an award. Except you can't promote it the same way, I guess.
You could take an Instagram story of him telling you, or him or her telling you that they like the beer.
You could, yeah.
Better than the one that won the gold.
You could.
That holds weight.
Yeah. I mean, but nobody knows who the other brewers are. They see them and they walk down the street. Nobody knows them. But that feels good to me. When another brewer, I mean, we're all good friends. If they text me and be like, I'm having your whatever beer, your Simple Things, it's tasting amazing, like that feels great. And so I make sure to do that to brewers. When I'm having a beer of theirs that tasting great, I'll let them know.
Interesting. All I'm thinking about right now is like, one of my things that I never do because I think they're strange is write bad reviews. Like just the amount of time that you put into something
Go out of your
to
way
write a
and do
negative
it.
review on whatever, a restaurant, an experience that you had, whatever, just move on with your life. But on the opposite side, I never thought about that from like a brewer's perspective of like maybe how motivating or exciting receiving that good review from, I guess, a qualified person. But like,
Yeah.
what if I came up to you, Eric, and I was like, hey, Vibrant Things.
Yeah.
Was phenomenalness.
Oh, that feels great. Yeah. I mean, you made up a word, but that's fine.
But it's easily interpreted. Fuck, Adam. Adam keeps getting this stupid word in my head. At our realtor meetings every week, Adam uses the word interpreted at least once in our meeting. And everyone looks at him like, Adam, it's not a word. He's like, what's the word? It's like interpreted. Oh, isn't that what I said? Anyway, that's in my head. Shit. What about like a customer though?
Oh, that's great too. Yeah. When I walk into the tasting room and see people enjoying it, like that's great. And I'll talk to somebody, especially the regulars or something, and see what they think. And yeah, that's great. Seeing the tasting room full of people there enjoying it and coming back time and time again. That's why I do it.
You mentioned something in there that was quite curious to me, that brewers, if they walk down the street, you would never know who they are.
No.
Do you think that's going to change?
No.
Because the industry is literally just starting, right?
Yeah.
If you look at craft beer, how old is it actually? What was the first craft brewery in BC? Was it Granville Island? But
no,
they're
there was one. I mean, if you go way back, I would think it's in the 80s. It was in Horseshoe Bay, and there was a brew pub there. I forget the name of the place. The guy that started actually just passed away recently, at a ripe age. But yeah, but it wasn't big until really maybe
just the last
6-7 years ago. And even then the last couple years have really come up, but I mean, you might get some people that kind of recognize a few, but you're not going to really know them. I know when I've been to the Craft Brewers Conference, that's the big conference in the US every year. And you see these famous brewers that have started, Brooklyn Brewing and Dogfish Head and that. And like, sure, I recognize them. And I mean, most people at the conference probably do. But if they were walking down any city, most people wouldn't. You'll get the random person here and there, which is, I mean, I don't want to be recognized. I want to be able to be anonymous still. So not that I'm not anywhere close to that level, but it's nice to not have to do it. And occasionally, I'll walk into, especially in New West, people will recognize me just because social media or something like that.
And the city's so small.
Yeah. And New West is just incestuous. And
it's like hard to go to a coffee shop without like running into a client or like someone who's been to an open house and be like, hey, do you remember me? I'm like, no.
Well, even today in the elevator.
We saw you at, that's right. They're like, we saw you at an open house.
Are you
And
Danny?
it's like, an open house? Like, you got to be more specific. And they're like, oh, is this house on whatever, 2nd Street?
Also,
like-
that craft beer place that you were talking about, that's the Troller Ale House, right?
That's it. Yeah.
And they opened in 1982.
There it is.
That's pretty crazy.
Quick on
Yeah.
his feet over there, Carl.
Yeah. So that was the first craft brewery in BC. But definitely completely different than what it is now. Even like, Storm has been open since the 90s
Yeah.
in East Van. And
That guy is amazing.
yeah, but nobody cared. He was doing what he wanted to do, and that's awesome for him.
And he still is.
Still is. Hopefully, I know they're developing that land, and I
they're
think he's getting
moving.
kicked out. I
Yeah.
don't know any details anymore, but sucks. But that's the reality of Vancouver. But he can't do what he did. Like, you can't start that again. He's started it, and unless he wants to invest a shit ton, which I assume he doesn't, he can't do it again. That's it.
Is anyone, I don't want to use the word crazy. Let's say unique. Is anyone as unique as that, as James, right?
Yeah.
His name? Is anyone as unique as James?
No.
Or creative?
I mean, creative maybe, but he'll just do it. He doesn't care. He doesn't care what other people think.
He doesn't throw
And
ideas
I don't know
away.
him
Yeah.
well. I've met him once or twice,
Yeah.
but he's just going to do what he wants to do. I mean, in the 90s when he started, I don't know who he was selling beer to because there weren't many people buying his beer, but he didn't care. He just did it. He built basically all his own equipment and just was making the beer he wanted to make, and good for him.
Sure, he'd have a lot of interesting things to say, Carl.
Should get him on the podcast.
I've tried. I'm still trying. I've sent him a few emails back and forth and Instagram messages. I'm slightly harassing him. I honestly think he'd be outstanding. Like, he'd be such a cool guy to talk to. Just like how the longevity that he's been doing it, and he's literally just in his own world. Like, he's doing his own thing, which is so cool. I like that. I guess my point was like, I don't know. Think of like back in the day, like social media influencers were not a thing. Like, even farther back when they didn't have TV, athletes weren't even like that popular. They didn't get paid that much money. But now that craft beer is taking off, someone's got to be like the face of it.
Yeah, and
So
like
is it going to be like a Jordan Foss who runs the company, who's like faces on social media, blah, 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 whatever? Or is it going to be the guy who actually makes the beer, who understands, or when you see this can, you're thinking like, oh shit.
I mean, I think right
Eric
now,
made
if you
this,
were to
I got to try this.
If you were to think of the face of craft beer right now in BC, Brent Mills, of Four Winds, co-owner, head brewer, he's probably the guy who was on the cover of the Georgia Straight not too long ago. But I still don't think he really gets, he'll get recognized by a few people here and there. If he goes to a brewery, they'll know who he is. Even then, like the tasting room staff at Steel and Oak didn't know he was at the brewery one time, texted me that he was there, and I wasn't around. So I messaged the tasting room staff being like, oh yeah, Brett Mills is in the tasting room having a few beers. Please just put them on my tab. And they messaged me back and like, we don't know who he is. And so he paid his beers and walked out, and that was it. But
Carl, what comes up if you Google Brent Mills? Is it him?
It is him. I found him. Yeah.
Okay.
yeah,
So it's
From
really
Four
easy to
Winds.
find him.
Yeah.
yeah. Good looking guy too. So.
Black beard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Black beard.
Thick.
We love good beards on this show. Okay, I want to go back to talking about like producing a beer that is like unique / creative / like up your alley in terms of a brewery versus producing beer that is going to sell because it's like the hot topic of the month or the year or whatever. Do you, as a head brewer, obviously you take a lot of pride in terms of the quality of the product that you put out? You mentioned a little bit that it bugs you sometimes that you kind of are forced in a direction because it's on trend kind of thing, like hazies are right now. Or I don't know if you guys did many sours. I know there was a couple, but sours seemed like they were on trend a couple years ago. It seemed like almost.
Yeah.
And the really hoppy, overpowering for me because I don't really like those like 90, 100 IBU IPAs, but that was like 3 years ago. It seemed like.
Yeah.
I guess what's the percentage, and is there a different pride level in terms of producing a beer that you think is just like a phenomenal beer for its category versus producing something that is going to sell? Or is on trend?
Yeah. So we do have to kind of balance that.
Sure.
And so, yeah, we have to sell the beer we make. We're a business. So we're lucky that we're pretty flexible. We have different size tanks, so we can do a small batch of something that I really want to make, or one of the brew team really wants to make, and that we're going to be very proud of, but we know is not going to get people excited. And then our Hazy IPA goes in a bigger tank, and we're still super proud of it. We still devote a lot of time. Actually, I mean, one of the brewers, he's kind of taken over the IPA program because he gets more excited about them than I do. So
who's that?
We call him Chef. His name's Brian.
Brian, yes.
Brian, the beer chef.
Yeah. So we already had a Brian when we hired him. So we told him right away, we're like, if you're going to be hired here, you need a nickname. He was a chef before. So he came in and he's chef now. I don't know him as anybody else really. And so, yeah, he's great. He really gets passionate about the IPAs, and those are the beers he drinks when he goes home, whereas I go home and drink a Pilsner. He drinks an IPA. And so I used to always bounce ideas off of him. And then really I was just like, well, why don't you just take control of this? And now he'll bounce ideas off of me, which is great. We're not just doing it all individually. But yeah, so back to your question about how do we balance it? Well, we'll make what we think we can sell. We're not always 100% right, but we'll kind of take our numbers and see, okay, well, we can make this beer, it'll sell a little bit slower, but if we make a smaller tank, then it'll still sell and we're happy. And so it's a balance about making what's going to sell and what we want to drink too. I just want a Pilsner, and that actually sells really well now. So that we're filling big tanks with it. But then something like Rauch beer, which is a German smoked beer.
Is that what you call it?
So
how is it pronounced?
Rauch. I don't actually know. I don't speak German, but I call it a Rauch beer.
I don't know either. I've seen it. Like, I call it Roche beer. Roche. Seriously, that's what I
think.
It's
got like this kind of like a in there, okay. But I don't speak German, so something like that. And now we had to make a pretty small tank of it, but I could drink that all day. I just can't drink enough of what we brew, and so we are still able to do that. I got super excited that when that came out, I think it turned out amazing, and we'll do it again for sure.
Can we talk a little bit more about like the day-to-day behind the scenes of brewing beer?
I'm just at my computer. I'm on spreadsheets all day long. That's it. That's all I do.
But in terms of like the science behind the creative side, the trial and error, is there a lot of that goes into it? Are there a lot of like small test batches? Let's say chef comes up with this idea that he wants to do this really specific IPA. Where are the recipes coming from? Is there a lot of trial and error?
So in an ideal world, yes. It's gotten to the point. So the market has changed so much where now we're releasing 3 new beers a month at least.
It's insane.
So it's insane. So
it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's phenomenalness, but it's also insane.
And so it's gotten to the point where we don't have time to do pilot batches. We used to do about 100-liter pilot batches for any new beer we were making. It was just the thing. But this was a few years ago when you'd release a new beer every 3 months and call it good. And people were okay with that. And now the market is demanding a new beer almost every week. And I mean, I say the market's demanding it. We're pushing it too. So it's both fault, like both sides' fault. We're pushing it. They're pulling it. And so the reality is we don't have time to make pilot batches, rarely anymore now. And so what we do is we know enough that we can create a recipe and be pretty sure how it's going to turn out. And we just brew a full batch. And, you know, you're not starting from scratch usually. Let's say an IPA. Well, we've brewed many IPAs before, so we know if we change the malt profile a little bit, it'll go in this direction. If we change it in this way, it'll go in the other direction. Hops, well, we know we've used a lot of hops before. We know kind of how to make them work. We might try a new variety of hop that we've never used before. You read enough about what it's supposed to taste like and smell like. You can make it work. You know how to blend them. And so you're not starting from nothing. If we were to do a completely different style of beer, then we'd have to do a pilot. If you're using some crazy ingredient that you've never used before and you don't know enough people that have used it. So part of it, the industry is great. You can talk to other people and ask them how they've used something. Online, you can find a lot of information. You have to be pretty skeptical of it because anybody can post stuff online. You don't know their credentials or anything. So you have to know what you're getting, make sure it makes sense. But we're basically, I don't want to say winging it, but you're making educated guesses of how the final beer is going to be. And then there's ways to kind of tweak it as it goes, if necessary, and before it's released. And worst case scenario, if we don't like it, we'll dump it.
So it's more working off of past experience in terms of what you've used and what's worked well, and just kind of building on the flavor profile off of those things.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, and so we can figure it out. We've got the experience.
What was your biggest dump of your career?
Other than Jamie's mishap?
Whoa! I didn't hear this.
I'm gonna get another beer.
What did we do? We haven't had to dump much. There was one. Let's do simple things.
Nice.
There was one batch where we used a new type of malt that was from a local maltster down in Washington State. And it was tasting all right, but it had a like grassiness to it.
So it wasn't on you guys. It was more so of the actual product that you bought.
Partly that. I mean, it was on us for not testing that malt out before using it, because it would use nothing. I've still got a bit there. Yeah. It was definitely, it could suit certain styles. I don't think it was necessarily the best, but for the style of beer we were making, it wasn't what we wanted. So we just had to dump it, and it's too bad. It does suck to have to do that, but it could be worse. And so we'll do it. And I think every brewery should have done it by now. If they've been around for a while, right. If they haven't, that's probably on them, because every brewery is going to have a mistake at some point.
Is this your favorite sound of all time?
Denny with the simple things?
Because it's mine.
Pretty good.
Can you... Well, before you taste it, just off memory, because I'm assuming you've had a few of these. What makes Simple Things unique, and why do you like it so much? Why are you so proud of this beer from Steel Oak?
So, Simple Things and just Pilsners in general, I think brewers either love them or hate them. And if they hate them, it's because they're hard to make. So, it's Simple Things. There's not much to it. Ingredient-wise, it's simple. But process-wise, there's nothing to hide anything. An IPA, we always say, well, anybody can make a good IPA. Can make a good IPA. A great IPA takes something. But a good IPA, just throw more hops at it, and it'll probably be all right, as long as you're not a terrible brewer. But a Pilsner, there's nothing there to hide it. It's also delicate flavors. And so if you've messed up in your brewing process, you'll taste it. And so from that, like, kind of technical point of view, that's why I will order a Pilsner or a light lager off of a brewer that I haven't tried before, because I get to judge that way, which is kind of rude, but it's what I want to do. Then I can tell how their other beers are going to be. From a drinker's side of thing, I just love it because it's crisp and clean. It's delicate. It's got a nice bitterness, especially, ours is a little more bitter than a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yes, you are going to be hearing that sound more and more as the podcast goes through.
And so yeah, to me, it's just a beer I can drink. A lot of there's like complexity, but in a really subtle way. And so it's not a beer I need to think about, but I just get to enjoy it. Yeah, that's what I want to drink most of the time.
I don't know a lot about judging beer, but I would like to be a beer judge. It seems like a Pilsner has a lot of different flavors as it goes from like hitting your tongue and then like the aftertaste. It just seems like the profile is bigger than a lot of other beers.
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Okay.
Because nothing is there. There's not one thing to overpower. An IPA, it's hop.
It's hoppy.
You know, you get the malt background a little bit, but it's mostly just hops all the way. And so a Pilsner, it's got the hops. You smell it. It's got the hop aroma. But then you taste it and you get that little bit of like graininess. We use a German malt. It's like an heirloom variety that I think is amazing. And so you get that graininess, almost like a Honeycrisp type of flavor to it, and then finishes, and then it's like a clean bitterness at the end. And yeah, that's it.
Eric loves Pilsners, just if you guys haven't figured that out yet.
Yeah, that's it. If I could just turn the whole brewery just Pilsner. I mean,
can you be that creative with Pilsners though?
You can have different ones.
Can you make 6 different Pilsners?
You could. Yeah. I don't think the average person will appreciate the differences, but yeah, you could. But no, it's not going to happen. And
so what's the reason that ales, IPAs have such a broad spectrum of how they taste? Is it just because of hop levels?
Mostly, yeah. I mean, like IPAs in general, especially like, I mean, you can get quite a broad range from your West Coast IPA that's like a bitter, has some like sweet caramel to it, and then it has a like citrusy aroma or something like that. And then you have your hazy IPAs that are a juice bomb, and it tastes like drinking orange juice, basically. And yeah, so you get that. But to me, I mean, in your face, there's more like big flavors that are getting you. But to me, they're not all the same, but like they're more the same than getting the subtlety. I'm trying to compare it to food or something, because it'd be like
subtlety is a good word. Subtlety is a good word because if you're not consciously thinking about like the whole experience, it's an experience drinking beer, Carl. The whole experience of like start to finish of a sip of something like this, you have to actually think about it. Whereas like an IPA, you just like put it back and it's just like a hoppy flavor, just bitterness on your tongue. Whereas like something like this, there's so many different categories that it kind of fits, or that are notes that are different, that you need to think about it. Otherwise it just tastes like a clean beer going back.
Which is, I mean, that's it, is that you don't have to think about it.
Right.
You can just drink it clean. It goes really well with food or just on a patio or something. And so, but you can, yeah. If you stop and think about it, there are a lot of flavors, but they don't punch you in the face.
In terms of recipes and stuff like that, I want to dig a little bit deeper.
Okay.
A lot comes from experience. I get that. And like what you've used in the past, what works well, and then building off of that. But in terms of like being creative, thinking outside the box, doing something different that you haven't done before, where's the exploratory phase coming from? Is it like trying stuff from different breweries, building off of that kind of profile, or like putting a recipe together that kind of, I don't want to say like it mimics, but is different? Or like, where does it kind of, let's say 2.5 years ago, you were doing your first big IPA. Where is all that creativity coming from?
So definitely a lot comes from other beers. So yeah, if I want to make an IPA, we'll go out and, I mean, we often go to a liquor store, buy 10 different IPAs and do a tasting and see what we like of certain ones, and then kind of come up with our own thing from there of what we're trying to achieve. But the more crazy flavors, I mean, or crazy styles, can just be a random inspiration. I find watching like cooking shows on Netflix, can inspire me just, and not directly. So whatever they're making is not like, oh, they're making a tom yum soup, I'm going to make a tom yum beer. Like that's not like that. But then seeing kind of the flavor combinations of something, and that will do that. So I have a tough time sometimes. So I come home from work and I just want to veg out and just think about nothing. And my wife will want to watch something, and I'm like, let's watch a cooking show. And I was like, no, I don't want to work anymore. And I can't turn it off. And so it's tough. So I want to watch a mindless something, but sometimes I'm in the mood to just watch a cooking show, and I know my mind's going to be racing and I'm going to think of different things and do that. So I get inspiration from whatever. I'll go to a restaurant and try something. I'll taste a cocktail or it has a flavor combination and go from there. I've got a list on my phone that just I keep adding to if I ever have something like, oh, this is an idea. They don't always go anywhere, but it's good to have that going.
How does that process work in terms of like a random idea? Hey, like just making this up because you're talking about Asian food. Szechuan, like IPA, I don't know. Just like make up a different version of a beer. How does it go from like note in your phone to in production? Conversations with
we usually we'll talk
it.
with the management team, the leadership team, and the sales guys. Right now it's 2 guys, so the salespeople, and they have to sell it in the end. So we kind of have to see that. Plus the brew team, so we'll brainstorm together and try to see what it is, and then kind of between the marketing and the sales team to see, should we actually make this?
What are the questions asked? Is it sellable? That's something, obviously.
Yeah.
Is it going to be good?
Yeah.
Because that's why I use the word Szechuan, because I saw a beer in a liquor store recently that was like a Szechuan lime beer. I can't remember who brewed it, but anyway.
So I brought a beer it's not Szechuan, but they're Timot peppercorns that are
That's
related.
what yours is? That's what that one is?
Yeah, and it's
I don't know if I've had that one.
Timot peppercorns are related to the Szechuan peppercorns, and it's got lemon, so it's a similar beer.
That's the Pilsner.
No, that one's a saison.
Oh, all right.
Yeah,
let's try that one next.
And that one came from me going to a spice shop, and I was there for inspiration, and I bought little samples of different spices that sounded interesting, and these Timot peppercorns were one of them. And because they're related to the Szechuan, but they have kind of a grapefruit citrus aroma to them. And I was like, all right, well, we can make a beer with that. And
okay, let's say something like that you've never done before. You've never used these spices. You go to a random spice shop. I don't even know what a spice shop is or where to find one. Eric found one. He picks up these spices. How do you gauge the amount to put into whatever? How big are those tanks?
So each brew that we do is just over 1,700 liters. And our tanks are
Wish I had one of those in my patio,
between
Carl.
1 brew and 6 brews to fill. So this 6 brew one is 10,000 liters.
I would assume there has to be some sort of like sample size to understand how much of this spice you're going to put in.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So
with something like that, there's a test batch.
Yeah. And part of that is like, well, we haven't used these ones, but we've used other peppercorns before.
Okay.
And so we can use that as a baseline. We can do little samples. So something like that's pretty easy because I can pull off 20 liters off of a brew and boil it and add the ingredient and see how it turns out. And part of it's finding online. Homebrewers are willing to test anything, really. And so you have a bunch of people that have done all these experiments. You don't know how good they are at brewing or anything, but at least it gives you a baseline. My mentality, and I think it's Steel and Oak in general mentality, is to err on the side of caution. I'd rather have a beer that you can't taste the Timot peppercorn, but it's a good beer all around, than one that's just spicy on your tongue and you can't really drink it because it's just too spicy. And so yeah, it's a beer first, and then the secondary ingredient is second.
So there's a home brew community.
Oh, they're huge. Yeah.
Well, I know that community is huge, but you can how do you say it? Contract out these like test brews too?
Oh, no. I Google and
okay.
there's online forums, and
You'd be
people
like,
have
hey,
just
we want
done
to
it.
try this recipe. Can you guys do it?
I mean,
for
you
us?
probably could. You could probably pay somebody to do it because they're willing to try it. But at that point, you might as well just do it yourself. But so there's online forums that I was part of when I did homebrew. I don't really do anything now, and so I'll see what they've done. But you get people that make beers that taste like you're drinking tom yum soup, and that's not what I want at all. So you have to be careful that some people, when they want that specialty ingredient, they want it to be that specialty ingredient,
right?
And we'd rather err on the side of caution and do that. And you can always, let's say it is in the fermenter, and you realize, oh, there's not enough pepper in here, and we wish there was a little bit more. You could find ways to add it in. So you could boil up a bit of water with the pepper and push that into the tank. You could soak the peppers in some vodka to get the flavor and then strain it out and push that into the tank or something like that. And so there are ways where we're not, once it's in the tank, it's done. We can still manipulate if we feel it needs to change.
This is the kind of shit that no one ever sees happen or like even understands that actually happens, right? All these little like creative little, I don't know what you call them, changes
tweaks
or like
and adding.
tweaks,
Yeah.
While it's even in the process, right?
Yeah.
At what point in the process are you changing?
So we don't do this often, but if let's say we tasted it and there's not enough lemon, well, we could add more lemon juice to it. You'd have to be careful that it doesn't bring in bacteria or something like that into it. But if you sanitize it with even vodka or something, well, that's going to kill all bacteria. And then you can put some lemon in there, get some lemon zest or something and soak that in vodka. And
what type of vodka do you use?
the cheap stuff.
Silent Sam.
Yeah. And so, yeah, we've done that. We did an infusion with rosemary for a beer, Talanoa, that came out in the winter.
I don't think I had that one.
Yeah.
That sounds super interesting.
Yeah, it was blackcurrant and rosemary, and I'd never added rosemary to a beer. So instead of adding rosemary directly to the beer, got rosemary, soaked it in some vodka, and then strained it out. And then we were able to do tests, taking beer off the tank, dosing it with a little bit of this rosemary vodka until we found the exact level that we wanted, and then made a big batch of that and put it in there. And
so you put vodka into the beer?
Yeah. I mean, it's very little in the...
Is that how the flavors are added?
I mean, that's one way to do it. We could have added the rosemary into the boil and gotten it that way. That'd be a way to do it. But this was a more controlled way, because then we have, a couple liters of vodka that's infused with rosemary, and we can do tests and find out, okay, well, we actually want to put 1.5 liters of vodka into this, even though we have 2 liters, but that would be too much if we put it in there. So we kind of got a little scale and do little tests of 100 milliliters of beer with 1 milliliter of the vodka or something like that, or even less, and do it until we get the exact level that we want. We haven't done this often, but yeah.
Are you the math guy?
I am a math guy in general, and so I do enjoy doing those things. Yeah.
Because when I see, and you can tell me if this is a completely ridiculous thought to have, when I see like, for example, rosemary infused beer, I'm thinking like, it's an unfiltered beer. They put rosemary into it. Why isn't there chunks of rosemary in my beer?
I mean,
I guess that's why, because you're soaking rosemary in vodka or something.
But we could have theoretically thrown the rosemary right into there, and it wouldn't be in your beer. It wouldn't make it to the final thing. Like, we don't filter it, but things settle out, and we don't get that. But it's easier in some scenarios. But like when you hop an IPA and you dry hop it, which essentially means adding hops into the fermentation tank, those hops will settle out into the bottom of the tank and will kind of transfer off of them. But you don't get chunks of hops in your can, hopefully, or else we're doing something wrong.
I still don't understand. Sounds amazing. Once a new beer is ready to rock, who's deciding whether it is good or it needs to be thrown out?
I think that's all of us. We're always,
Or is it just like you? You're like, this is great. Or are there like 6 people saying, and does your weight hold higher than theirs? Like, fuck you guys, I'm the head brewer.
I mean, it is all ultimately my call a lot of the time. I mean, I guess it's Jordan's call most of the time.
How's his palate though?
This is pretty good. And so we'll talk about it, but I make sure the brew team is tasting all the time. So you're taking samples to measure, pH or the density and things like that. I don't care what the numbers say at the end of the day. It's how is it tasting? So I make sure my brew team is tasting as they go. Anytime they're pulling a sample off the tank. And then also we're curious especially when it's a new beer, as it goes to make sure you're sampling it, see how it changes as it's aging in the tank for a couple weeks. It's interesting. I'll go around once or twice a week and just taste every single tank. We have 11 tanks, so it's not that many. I'll take a couple sips off of each tank just to see how they're doing. If it's a beer we've done 100 times, then I should know how it should be tasting. And but yeah, it's everybody. And so if somebody notices something seems off or it's not quite there, then there's ways to kind of either adjust it as you go or be like, no, we're not doing this. This is done, which is a sad day.
So a lot of the stuff you've been doing recently has just been like one batch.
Yeah.
So the point of this question, some of the things you do are year round and you do multiple times. How hard is it to be consistent with the flavor profile in different batches of the same beer? It's
hard, but we have systems in place to make sure. So
because the brewing process is complicated.
It is, yeah.
There's a lot of things that could go wrong.
Yeah, definitely.
Like RCA, for example, you brew it all year round.
Yeah.
One of the most popular beers. How does every can taste the exact same?
And if you're really looking for it, like we notice slight variations. If you're not looking for it, you're not going to notice it. You shouldn't. And yeah, so there will be slight variations every batch. But we have systems in place, so we're very consistent with the brewing process to make sure it's being done the same way every time. Yeast is probably the biggest variable because it's alive and it controls how it's going to taste at the end. Like it's the most important part that people don't really think of because the brewing process is when the guy's there doing it, but then we go home and the yeast keeps doing its thing. And so we make sure we count the cells in, we take a little sample and put it under microscope and we're counting how many cells of yeast are in there and making sure it's happy and that. And if
for every batch of beer you're doing
every batch of beer, we're counting the cells. It doesn't take that long.
Did you know that, Carl?
You guys have a microscope?
We have a microscope and it's really cool because you can see these little tiny cells. And that's who's making the beer. We can do all we want, but the yeast is actually making the beer.
I would have paid a lot more attention in Chem 11 if we were if we were looking under a microscope at samples of beer.
Yeah,
just saying.
Yeah, stop making your own slides.
I should bring that into the curriculum, I think. The education for beer has gotten crazy in the last 5 years, maybe.
Yeah,
there's 4-year degrees to brew beer now.
Oh yeah.
Which sounds outstanding.
Wait, what?
There's degrees to be.
Like
I don't even know what.
Like, is
it
like
a degree or is it a diploma?
The one, I mean, at KPU,
yeah,
it's a 2-year diploma, I guess.
Oh, I thought it was 4.
Yeah,
maybe it's okay.
But I mean, there's always been degrees. Is it UC Davis that has fermentation science, and they're at the forefront of a lot of things. There's a few places in the U.S. and then you go to Germany, and there's a lot more.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because it's so recent. Most people in the industry don't really have a formal education in North America, I'd say. And so we just do things because nobody's told us otherwise. I was in Germany last summer and talking to a guy there who was American, but he'd been living in Germany for, 10 years or whatever, and was into beer. He's somewhat into the industry. And I was just debating, because in Germany, you have a 4-year degree and you make beer, and it's not like, oh, this is it. Like, they just tell you, these are the steps.
Yeah.
You can't change the steps. We've been doing these steps for 500 years. So these are the steps. And you just follow those same steps. And the Germans make amazing beer, but they're not too creative. They've just make the same beer. And I'll drink that beer all day. But you come to North America, and because everybody's just kind of gotten into it, I have no formal beer education. And, well, who's going to tell me to not do it this way? I'm going to figure it out. And hopefully you're making smart decisions. You're thinking it through and you're kind of going, but you just try something. And that's where all these new styles come from. I mean, hazy IPAs, the Germans, no, you can't do that. Why is it hazy? It has to be filtered. It has to be this and that. And even,
Well, they don't even like IPAs in general.
no, you go to Germany and you weren't even allowed to dry hop until 5-10 years ago or something, because you could do it, but then you can't call it beer. So they have the strict rules that you can do other things, and they're not going to come and arrest you, but you can't call it beer if you add fruit to something. It's not beer anymore. It's a malt beverage, or I don't know what they call it there, and so they're still very strict about what they call beer.
Do you have any experience with what the curriculum is like in these educational programs?
No, I've hired a couple people from the KPU program
who've completed the program.
Yeah. Well, one guy that's completed it, and one guy right now that we have is in between the 2 years.
Okay.
Summer student or summer hire that we've got.
Yeah.
And it's definitely still one of those things. They teach you some basics, but it's not complete, and it's up to you to do it. Just because you've completed that degree doesn't mean you know how to make beer, like most schooling.
Yeah.
It's still up to you to really learn on your own and get experience and be into it. So the KPU program, probably a good foundation, but you're not going to come out of it knowing everything.
Do you know who's making the curriculum for this?
I know a few of the people involved. I don't know.
I really hope they're beer people.
Oh, they've hired some beer people for sure. People that have experience at big breweries, smaller breweries, a lot of like bigger breweries and like European breweries that do it, which is tough to translate off into a small brewery.
Totally.
That are around here, because if you have access to everything, sure, you can do it one way, but we're often kind of rigging things up because this is the equipment we have. We'll find a way to do it. It's a lot of MacGyvering and kind of getting it going.
I lost my train of thought with this educational process. Oh, where did all your beer knowledge come from? Did you get into craft beer 5 years ago when Steel Oak opened?
Yeah. That's
no prior knowledge.
Not from a commercial point of view.
Right.
So I'd been homebrewing for...
Oh, you had? Okay.
8 or so years before then. But I had no commercial brewing experience.
You understand how the process worked, just not at scale. Really.
Yeah. And I was in school for engineering, mechanical engineering, and just needed a summer job. So I was like, well, I'd like to work at a brewery. and the engineering really helps to have kind of, part of it's just the way to think things through. Part of it's understanding the processes, because it's a lot of pumps and pressure and flow and all that. So it definitely helps. And then, I came in understanding beer a bit, and then Pete took me under his wing and taught me a lot of kind of how things are done on a bigger scale. And then it's just been a lot of learning as I go, reading a lot, talking to other brewers. I'm always learning new things.
I love beer, Carl.
Beer is amazing.
Is it the best form of alcohol? Whatever. I don't know what you call it.
It's up there for sure.
It's just so good. There's There's so many different types.
I know.
Endless. Who in the beer industry do you I use the word admire? I don't know if that's the right word, but who do you think is doing a good job? I don't want to talk about bad job because consumer point of view, from my perspective, of course, there's stuff that I don't like. There's always beers that I'll try that I'm just like, that doesn't make any sense. But it's a palate thing. I'm sure someone somewhere thought it was good.
I mean,
but like overall,
there's some bad beer out there. I'm not. Yeah, there's
good.
A lot of good beer, but there's a lot of bad beer, and we're lucky. Like Vancouver is really good. You go to other cities that the beer scene's a few years younger, and there's a lot more bad beer. And so we're doing well in Vancouver overall, but there's still bad beer out there.
Who do you like in Greater Vancouver?
There's a lot. Four Winds has been doing amazing things since they opened, and their quality, I don't think I've ever had a bad beer from them. And they just do all sorts of styles.
Yeah.
It's all over. Daggerad also making amazing beer. They're focused on German, although they're starting to branch out a little bit.
German? Belgium.
Sorry. Did I say German?
You said German.
Yeah. No.
Belgium.
Yeah. Belgian.
It's very unique, I find, Daggerad.
Yeah.
Like a couple of them I really like, a couple other beers, but another couple I'm just like, eh. And again, my palate, but it's super specific, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Belgian beer has its kind of, it is Belgian beer, and there's no way around it. And if you don't like it, well, then you're probably not going to like Daggerad. But they, in general, I mean, their beer quality is always up there. But yeah, if you don't like Belgian beer, then don't go there. Yeah, those are up there. Brass Neck has always been amazing.
Awesome.
Just lights out good, and huge variety every time you go in there. Just there's always something new, always something good. But I'll go to their Pilsner or their corn lager most of the time because that's what I drink. Yeah, there's a lot of good beer in Vancouver in general. Like I said, other cities have some really shitty beer.
I don't know if you have an answer for this, but I ask everyone, how did the scene blow up so crazily in the last, has it been less than 10 years?
Oh yeah.
It's like 6-7 years.
If you look at it, like Steel and Oak just turned 5 years old, and it seems like we're veterans now. Like it's just crazy.
That's
like you look
insane.
at P49 that you think, oh, that's one of the original. They're only 6-7 years old. Like they're not that old, and
they're crushing it. Eh?
yeah, they're making. I mean, they're a different beasts. They've always been big and going for a different market, but their quality is great. Graham, the brewer there, knows what he's doing, and
even just the feel in their tasting room is like really dialed in. It's really good.
I mean, back when it was originally open and it looked like just a conference room.
Did it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It had like carpeted, but that was like, you weren't allowed to have a lounge the way they are now. You were allowed to give tasters, and that's it. And so when they opened, they weren't imagining that they would have, it would be a place people would go to drink. We weren't allowed to do that.
Even in North Van, I went to a couple of the new ones recently. Beer, which is like a year old now, maybe.
Yeah, something like, yeah.
House of Funk, which is pretty new, 3 months or 4 months.
They just opened up and
really
making great beer right away.
Really good. But they won't serve you a glass of beer. They'll only serve you a flight.
They don't have a tasting room at all? Or
they have a tasting room, but their license only allows you to serve flights for some reason.
Why is that?
It's
the amount?
It's licensing.
Per glass?
Yeah. And so I'm sure they're trying to get what's called a lounge license. Right now they have a tasting room license, and they've got to get a lounge license that then lets it basically operate like a bar.
It's tricky probably, right? Because it's like part industry, like industrial, and part like a restaurant.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And
most
so
of them don't serve food though.
No, and you don't need to serve, you need to have like snacks if you have a lounge, but you don't need to have a full on kitchen.
Can we just call out the liquor board right now?
So I don't know if this is a liquor board or it could be the city. It could be a municipal thing. And you have to get approval from both.
City of North Van, you suck.
Yeah.
Figure your shit out now. Also, Liquor Board of BC. Fuck, stop with all this red tape bullshit. You understand that people want to drink craft beer. Let them. Don't serve it to them in these fucking shot glasses. It's stupid. It makes me drink faster, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'll finish a flight in 35 seconds, whereas I'll have like a 16-ounce beer and it'll take me 6 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't really, I don't know what they're trying to do. They're trying to, and part of it might be bars are kind of lobbying against it because they,
yeah, so do the taxi companies. Go
yeah.
fuck yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes no sense. If that's what people want, you're not hurting anyone. You're building community, really. And so
I don't understand, Eric.
Yeah.
And I'm really aggressively upset about this.
yeah, I don't deal with the liquor board and the city and stuff, which I'm happy because it just sounds terrible.
Oh, it's so bad. So I started my professional career bartending when I was 19. That was 11 years ago. Yikes. It's gone by quickly. And at that time, literally, it was Molson, Budweiser, Coors Light, Granville Island. That's it.
Yeah.
I worked at 4 or 5 bars. Later I bartended for 5 years, I think. So in the last couple of years, there was more that was coming out. There was Driftwood. There was like a few others. But early on, it was Granville Island. It was like craft beer. And everyone was like, oh, what is this new shit? And now you look, well, since they sold the Molson, it's gone downhill. So
Yeah, but it was a start.
It's not
at
even
least.
craft beer. It's not craft anymore.
No. It's Molson. It's
Garbage.
yeah.
You can say whatever you want on this show. I have a lot of opinions, as you can probably starting to see.
But Granville Island started as a microbrewery and just got bought out?
They were like 1990. Like they've been around for a long time.
I don't know their history because they don't know if they were ever actually fully brewing at Granville Island.
Oh.
Because even before they got
Their facility's so small there.
yeah.
I can't see that.
So I don't know if they ever actually were. They were brewing Kamloops or Kelowna or something, but they were still independently owned at some point.
Yeah.
And the Granville Island was kind of the tasting room, showcase, whatever. And then they got bought by Molson and they're brewing at the Burrard Brewery. And
How do you see this crazy beer industry going? So it seems like in the last 5-7 years, whatever it is, the big breweries are understanding that their market share is going down and they're purchasing craft breweries. Is that going to continue to happen? Do craft breweries even want that?
I mean, if somebody came up and said, hey, here's $50 million.
Do you know what Granville Island sold for?
No.
120.
Really? Yeah. Yeah. And like there's been some big.
But they were big. They had like a big
Yeah.
distribution.
I mean, Ballast Point in San Diego sold for $1 billion.
Jeez.
And so, which now Constellation Brands has said they've overpaid. And so they've written off some of that debt. So, but even let's say it was 500 million, that's still just crazy. So I don't blame an owner for getting an offer and saying,
sure,
yeah, I'll take it. Cause I don't own the brewery, but if somebody came up to me with $50 million, sure, I'd probably take it. At the end of the day, it's just beer. We're not saving the world or anything like that. And so
depends how you look at it.
Oh, yeah.
I think we're building community.
You're saving a lot of people's world, I think.
Yeah. And so, but
Community is huge,
Yeah.
especially
it
with
is.
you guys.
It
For
definitely
sure.
is. And so there's something to that, which is where I think craft beer is going. The big breweries, there's not much room for another P49 in
Right.
BC. Or Phillips or whoever like that. That's that big. And so anybody trying to get in that, I mean, maybe you can, but I would not bet for that.
It would probably just take so much capital now
Yeah.
because the space is obviously the space is more competitive.
It's getting the market share that you just can't get. But if you just want to be your local neighborhood brewery, there's a space for that.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody's going to succeed because there is a lot of competition now. But if you're making good beer, have a good space for people to come to, and that's your goal, there's space for that. There's a lot more. Still a lot of neighborhoods that don't have a brewery. And so that's where I think it's going. You look at, especially in the US, that the markets are a little bit bigger. The breweries that are struggling are the ones that are trying to distribute all over either the whole country or all of California, let's say, which is bigger than Canada. Those ones are the ones that are struggling.
Yeah.
And it's because there's new breweries open all the time, people are going hyper local, and you might as well stay where you are.
Totally.
Put your money there. You're creating jobs in your own community, and you see the people, which is nice. Like, people come in and they see, oh, the beer's being made here by that person, not by who knows who.
I'm assuming you're around the same age as me. I don't know how old you are.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
I'm going to guess 32.
I got it. 34.
Oh, that's close.
Yeah.
So my dad ran sports bars throughout Greater Vancouver. Well, all the way up until like, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, maybe. But his stories of the like late 70s, 80s, early 90s were just insanity for sports bars. One, they had no drinking driving rules, which was just crazy. So like people could go have 19 beers after, no, 19, maybe like 8 or 9 beers after work and just drive home. To them. No one cared.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Like his stories are, cops would pull you over after work and you've had like 8 or 9 beers at work. They'd be like, how far are you going? You're like, I don't know. I live like 5 minutes away. They're like, okay, get home safe.
That's because the cops were drunk too, man.
So it seems like it's just like, it's the next thing. It's like little neighborhood bars.
Yeah.
I wasn't around in the 70s, early 80s, but it seemed like that was the crazy thing. Everyone after work would go get like a fucking 25-cent beer after work and they'd have 8 of them and then go home. Whereas now the community not revolves, but like one of those little hub spots for communities is craft breweries now, which is so cool to see.
Yeah. Yeah. Now we just need more zoning that allows it, because there's a lot of neighborhoods that could support one, but they're not the city isn't going to allow it. And it's tough. But then it's also weird because neighborhoods
back to my point about the city of North Van.
Yeah.
Figure your shit out.
Get on it.
Also other cities.
But like communities now pop up around a brewery.
Totally.
So like, condos going up in New West are advertising 100%. That they are close to Steel and Oak, and they'll come and take pictures for their promotional material because that's a selling point. People want to live close to one, and cities need to, light industrial in general is disappearing in Vancouver, and it's tough, but allowing more of that.
You got to get in those photos. I think that's how
I'm just trying to get a free condo out of them. But they're not going for it.
I think you have a better chance of getting a photo than a free condo.
I don't care about that. That's
how these head brewers are going to get a name for themselves. Got to get in these marketing plays. What? Why is Steel and Oak different? Obviously, I have a personal connection to Steel and Oak, and I have a very soft spot in my heart for it. But it seems like the culture is, I don't know. It seems like it's different than other breweries that I've been to.
I think partly, from my point of view, it's quality. We've always had this kind of commitment to quality. Pete started it, and Jordan and Jamie basically didn't know anything about beer. So it was like, okay. But they trusted him that he said, we need to give our beer time. And that's one of the biggest things is we give our ales 4 weeks, our lagers at least 6 weeks. And
did you know that lagers are in the tank for 6 weeks?
Yeah. Is that why you guys are always short of the good stuff?
No, that's why they keep having to buy more tanks.
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
but you can pump them out quicker. You could be okay. We have X number of tanks. We've put as many tanks as we can in our space. That's it. We're not getting any bigger. And so some owners would be like, all right, well, let's cut down 4 weeks to 3 weeks. And the beer would be still good, but it's not quite there.
That little bit, right?
It makes a difference. You try it, and it's not trying to cut corners to make it, well, we can make a bit more money if we do this, which short term, probably yes. Long term, people are going to notice the quality difference.
For sure. And
so other breweries, there are definitely some that give it the right amount of time, but there's a lot that will pump out a beer in 2 weeks because get more beer in there, more to sell, turn it over quicker, and that's it. And that has been great. I never feel with the ownership that I need to be like, trying to justify why this is the way to go. They're always just like, okay, beer. Just do it. Do what it needs. And I'm definitely conscious of not spending more money than I would need to, but it's never been me trying to, oh, well, I really need this $500 piece of equipment. And they're just being like, no, deal with it. And so I'll just buy it. And they're like, well, they trust me to make that call. And that's it.
Let's wrap up this way. Well, actually, last thing I want to ask you before we wrap up. How awesome are collaborations with other breweries? And how do they come about?
Collaborations are great. Like the industry.
Like, is it just like sending a text being like, hey, Steve, we haven't seen each other in 3 months. Let's do something. And he's like, hey, I want to do a Pilsner. And you're like, yep, me too.
That's often the case. Yeah. Yeah. So often it's just like, okay, we'll do it. It's sending a text being like, hey, we got an empty tank. What do we want to make?
That's it, hey?
Meet up for some beers and figure it out.
That's so cool.
Sometimes it's a little bit more. Sometimes it's kind of set up through somebody else. So we have a beer in the tank collaboration with Blood Brothers in Toronto.
Cool.
And that was an introduction through Jake, who brings their beer in to BC. And so she's like, oh, they're coming out for a festival. They're going to be in town. Do you guys want to do a collab? And we're like, yeah, we love those guys.
Jake?
Yeah.
Girl named Jake.
Oh,
I love her. She's so cool.
Yeah, she's fantastic. And so she set that up. But for the local guys that we're friends with, it's as simple as a text, an email, seeing them for a beer sometime, just being like, hey, let's do this. The industry as a whole is the best industry I've been a part of. I don't know any other industry where I can call who should be my competition
it's so
and
cool.
just be like, hey, I'm having trouble with this. How do you guys do it? And they'll just tell me. Like, there's no like, well, I don't want to tell you. Good. You're fucking up. Means I get more money. And yeah, I'll call our competition, and I've got some people that I'm better friends with for whatever reasons. And it's great. So yeah, it's as simple as a text.
Like all the brewers that we've had on our show always mention this, that like they just love working with other breweries, right? And just coming up with stuff. It's never been hostile or any of that. No one's ever said anything.
No, it's great. I mean,
I just assume like the industry's growing, but it's so small that if someone was just like, no, go fuck yourself, do your own thing.
Right. They kind of,
it would just be like
a bad
excommunicated from the industry.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We're all good. And people talk.
Yeah. I mean, now it's gotten big enough that I feel like I used to know everyone in the industry, all the brewers, and now it's big enough that I don't necessarily know them well, or maybe I've seen them or something. But that doesn't, if they were to call me or pop in or something, I wouldn't tell them to go fuck themselves. Like, I would be like, yeah, come on in, have a beer, and we'll chat about whatever.
Do you think breweries are going to keep popping up at the rate they are, or do you think it's going to start slowing down soon?
It has to slow.
I think there's going to be a correction, where basically consumers are getting smarter.
Right.
And it used to be, no matter what you put out, people are like, oh, this is great, it's craft beer. And even if it's shitty, people would still go buy it. And now
not anymore, eh?
No, consumers are getting smarter.
Yeah.
And so if it's bad beer, you're not going to sell it. It also comes down to marketing. You need the marketing because there's 50 beers on the shelf.
Right.
You need to have a reason to even pick it up. It can be the best beer in the world, but if you never pick it off the shelf, you're never gonna try it and find out.
So what have been some of your favorite collabs, I guess I should say?
They've all been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Anyone that sticks out?
I mean, we're really good friends with the Dagarad crew. Yeah. And so we've done 3 now with them. We call ourselves Best Friends Brewing. And it's always just been a lot of fun to do that. I mean, whether or not we do a collab, they're a lot of fun, and we'll hang out together. One of the most fun ones we did was with a guy named Sebastian from Frightgeist in Germany, just outside of Cologne. He's based out of, and he came over. He was here for a festival, and to him, he didn't want to brew a traditional German beer because he's the like
That's all he does,
anti-German
yeah.
brewery that puts weird shit in his beer. And I'm just like, well, we're the German brewery. We do like traditional beers. And so we tried to do something different, and we came up with doing what's called a Stein Beer, which is not really a style, more of a process. Stein means stone in German. And it's how they used to boil the beer was because they had wooden vessels, wooden vats. They couldn't light a fire underneath it. They used to put hot rocks into a fire and then take the rocks into the vessel, and it would boil from that, and it kind of caramelizes as it does that. So we kind of improvised a way to do this, where we took some rocks from a landscape store and basically put them in. We made these out of old kegs, made basically a giant sieve, cut up a whole bunch of holes in an old keg, and heated these rocks that were in there over a propane burner. Then took a chain and the forklift and lowered them into a stainless steel vessel. And then we pumped the beer as we were brewing it.
Dude, that must be so much fun for you.
It was a lot of fun because the rocks were like glowing red. And then as soon as the liquid hit, they just start steaming up and fizzing up, and we just got this steam bath, and Sebastian had put on some like Rammstein or something. So it was just
course,
like
just to set the mood.
German metal music
House
going.
music.
And just we're in this like steam bath as it's going. It was just a moment. It was great.
And was the beer good?
The beer was great too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause it had got like a mineral quality from the rocks, got some caramelization.
How do you feel people from like, I guess, Vancouver and US react to like super traditional European style beers?
I mean, that one people got excited for.
Yeah.
Because it was a pretty small batch too. So it wasn't hard to get it there because the process was super cool. In terms of just general, like the Pilsner, people don't get excited about it, but it becomes once you try it and you're like, oh, it becomes your go-to, and you always have a 6-pack in your fridge, and you might try other beers, but then come home from work and you just want a beer. Mm-hmm. That's it. So
that's cool.
Yeah. It's not the exciting beers.
Right.
It's, which is I think the way people are going is you still want that like exciting thing sometimes, but I just want a beer.
Traditional, something that works, right?
Yeah, whatever it is. I mean, it might be an IPA for you, like whatever it is, but something you don't have to think about. It's not tasting like having a taster glass.
Are you ever set on a specific beer? Like you're saying you love simple things so much, but then you try something and it just changes everything for you. Does that ever happen?
Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, I know what I like. So I haven't been like floored in one direction,
Gotcha.
But I mean, when I first got into craft beer, I was like, oh, I like ales. They've got more flavor. And I think that's the general thing of why people get into craft beer. And they're like, well, I'm into craft beer. I want as much flavor, like punch me in the face with flavor. And then as you get into it, you realize, oh, wait, I sometimes want that, but I also just want a beer. And I want the like subtleties, and I want just something refreshing.
I don't know why I just thought of this. Maybe we should describe this beer first. So now we're drinking, what is it called, Carl? Lumina?
Lumina.
Can you read the description?
Lumina. So it's a saison with timut, peppercorn, and lemon.
Ooh. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's
6.3%. Timut. This was the timut peppercorns that you were talking about earlier, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So what are we gonna experience here?
So the saison yeast already, it's a pretty light beer. It's, the malt profile is not huge. It's just a little bit of Pilsner malt and some wheat. And then the saison yeast gives it like pepperiness almost. This dry, crisp pepperiness. And then the timut peppercorns they're like Szechuan peppercorns, where they like tingle your tongue, but they're so little that you barely get that. And you get almost grapefruit, citrusy quality. And then there's some lemon zest and lemon juice in there too.
It smells lemony.
Smells good.
I guess that's the saison kind of smells.
So
fruity too, right?
they all the flavors kind of are in a similar vein.
And saisons are usually more carbonated.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, this is more crisp and carbonated.
Okay, this is the story that I just remembered. Do you remember early days, man? This must have been like 6 to 12 months after you guys opened. You got a big tank shipped in. Do you remember the process of putting the tank up?
Oh yeah.
Are we allowed to tell that story?
Yeah. That was before we decided to pay somebody to do it.
I remember Peter on the forklift. There was like some sort of lever mechanism that was going over the beams
Well, you
or the
guys
rafters.
just like rented forklifts and stuff?
Well, we have a forklift. We rented some extension forks.
Yeah.
And that was it. We had some strapping. And,
That's fucking hilarious.
yeah. And these are big tanks. They're, I don't know, 17 feet high or something like that. And those ones held about 5,000 liters or so.
And what, you guys just couldn't get it in?
5,000.
You guys couldn't get it in?
It got in.
We got it in
Just
eventually.
getting it upright. Was
Yeah.
the challenge.
Basically,
It was just so high, right?
Yeah. So the forklift, we went as high as we could, and it wasn't quite tilted enough to get it over center and get it upright because they come on their side. And so we just had to kind of like, we were tilting it, lifting it up from the top, and it was tilting on its feet to kind of come over.
Jeez.
And then it was like, well, that's as high as the forklift gets. And so we're like, well, what are we going to do? This is it. And our solution was to basically tie some ropes to it and pull it. And so we got up
With the beams, right?
Yeah,
In the
well,
rafters?
Oh, so you looped the ropes over the beams and tied it.
no, we basically tied it to the tank, to the top of the tank, and then we went up. There's like a mezzanine area, and we got, I don't know, 4 or 5 guys to just pull,
That's
just because it was just about there. It was just over the tipping point. It was just under the tipping point, and we just needed a little bit more. And sketchy, and we got it, and we didn't learn our lesson that time. But then we did it a couple more times, and we're like, let's just pay somebody to make sure they did it. Although the first guy we paid was just as clueless as we were.
Who was involved in that transaction of actually putting this thing straight up? It was Peter.
Peter was probably the guy in charge.
MacGyver.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, let's use these ropes and let's figure this out. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, it was just a bunch of us being like, well, what if we try this? And
I'm pretty sure I was there that day, Carl.
yeah.
Because
Your office was up there.
We had our
remember
office
that.
up there for the first maybe year of Steel and Oak. And I remember seeing what was happening and I'm like, what the?
yeah, we made sure to clear everybody around the vicinity.
Oh, yeah.
Because if it did crash down,
But halfway through I left because I didn't want to witness something that I would have to like testify against.
In court, yeah.
So I was like, I got to get out of here.
like, I think we did it like everybody was out of the way that could have gotten hurt.
Totally.
We could have damaged a ton of equipment
Totally.
and lost a ton of money. But actually people getting hurt, I don't think there was that much risk.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Dude, I work construction, so like 20% of my job is stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's it.
How do we get up there? Like,
Probably
how do
more
we
than 20.
do this? How do we do that? Yeah.
But that's every day. Is they're always like, well, we'll figure it out. Like, we don't know what we're
course.
doing. Like, there's no manual to follow. You're just doing it.
But like you said, even the guy that you hired had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. We hired other people another time and they
It
were
was good?
better. Yeah. But one guy was just like, well, let's do this. And we were lifting an even bigger tank.
Fuck.
And at one point, the back wheels of the forklift just started coming up because it was just a little too
So front
heavy.
heavy, yeah.
And so we just had to get everybody to hang on the back of the forklift to try to get more weight on
That's
it.
hilarious.
And it worked eventually.
Just envision this.
Yeah.
like-
It's
8, 9, 10 grown adults just like grabbing the back
Just
of the
calling
forklift.
people from the tasting room to come help.
yeah.
That's so funny. I really like this beer.
Thank you.
Do you remember? Did you grow up in Greater Vancouver?
Yeah. In
You did.
Richmond.
Do you remember when Bud Light Lime came out?
I do. I wasn't living in Vancouver, but I do.
It was my first year of bartending, I think. And apparently the industry was that lame that they had never thought to put a fruit in a beer. So someone put a fruit in a beer and it was Bud Light Lime. And this shit was nuts.
Mhm.
We ordered it into
I remember
we
it.
couldn't keep it in the bar. Like everyone wanted to try it.
BLLs, baby. They're still popular.
It was insane.
People
But
still
like, this
drinking
is a
them.
good version of that. That was garbage.
Right.
This is such a good summer patio beer.
Thanks.
It's so good.
One of my favorite beers from your guys was like was a grape saison. Do you remember what that was called?
Grape?
Yeah, you guys had like wine skins.
Oh, that was
maybe?
rosé.
Oh,
Rosé.
yeah. Blush.
Blush.
Yeah.
That was
why'd I say
delicious.
rosé?
Yeah.
Rosé's
So
the
yeah,
wine.
that was
That was good.
fun. We'll make it again this year. You can only make it once a year when there's a winery across the next unit over, basically, and we take their spent wine grapes, their
Perfect.
skins, and throw it into the beer. But it's once a year around October or so when they get their grapes.
Do you guys do that a lot? Just like contact like random manufacturers and stuff looking for like extra or whatever's left over?
Eric's a specialist on the spice shop.
I mean, not like that. Yeah, using somebody's waste that's basically the only time I can think of. Yeah,
Gotcha.
because they pay to get them composted,
Right.
and so we're
That
just
was a
like, well,
great beer.
yeah, and
you're
they
paying-
did us a favor to make sure that they were sanitary, and so it's a bit of extra work on their end, and so that's great. And so yeah, we're gonna do that again this year.
Could you use other wineries and do that?
Yeah, it's just nice that they're literally like we just went over there.
Is that is that one of the factors? Is like you want to keep it local? You want to keep it New West?
I'm not against using other wineries. Like I'd use local BC wineries in general, but they're great. They're right there. It makes it easy because the day that they're done with it, I went over with the forklift, grabbed a tote
That's
full of
so
wineskins,
good,
and
yeah.
that's it. So instead of trying to
The
organize
back
shipping,
wheels were on the ground at this point.
oh yeah, this was nothing. This was
Never
only like
touched the ground.
200 kilos or something like that. And so yeah, it's nice to have that local if you can, if you have good quality stuff.
Because wouldn't that beer just be an absolute gong show in the summer?
It would if we could make
people
it.
would love it.
Yeah, there's also just like it's one of the shittiest beers to make because the getting the wine skins into the beer means you have to put it in a different tank, transfer the beer onto the wine skins that are in this different tank. Then once it's ready, take it off, put it back in it. So you basically need 2 tanks to make 1 tank's worth of beer. Which come October, we're slowing down a little bit, and that's doable.
Right.
I have to make sure logistically it works, but it's doable. In the middle of summer, we couldn't do it because then we'd be making half as much beer
Right.
as we could.
Have you ever brewed with wineskins before? Like, how do you know the process with stuff like that?
Grape skins.
Yeah.
Grapes.
Wine is the byproduct.
Sorry, right. I don't know why I'm saying. What the hell is a wineskin?
I mean, I call them wineskins, so yeah, I'll give you that one. I did a little. We have like these little 100-liter fermenters, so pretty small batch. And
Little.
I mean, yeah, for a home brewer, it's a big size. And
Like a
back,
bathtub?
yeah, home brewers generally make 20 to 40 liters at a time. So it's a decent size, but for our size, it's you pull off a bit of beer from an already made batch, and we did it. And Kevin, our brand boss, his father-in-law makes wine, and he had these grape skins available, and he gave us like a Home Depot bucket full of them, and so I tried this 100-liter with it, and it turned out great, but it wasn't very much beer. So,
Right.
and then we're like, okay, well, what else can we do? Can we do this in a bigger scale?
But you have that formula, right? Like you have it written down somewhere.
I mean, the amount. Well, yeah. So like
if
what we
something's
did.
if something's successful, you make sure you know.
Oh yeah.
what
So we
exactly
record
step by
everything
step.
you do. That's definitely so. If you want to be able to repeat things, yeah, you
No
record,
problem.
Record everything, good or bad. You just write it down, whatever is happening, and so yeah. So then we tried it out. I put the beer that we made onto the skins, and then kind of tasted it every day. I'm like, is it ready yet? I don't know. I don't know how long it takes. So I just kind of waited and like, okay, it's tasting all right. And then I was like, okay, it's good. I guess, what if it gets worse if I leave it longer? And so I had to come in on a Saturday to take it off the skins because I didn't want it to get worse. And maybe it wouldn't have, but once it's tasting good, I don't want to risk it because wine, like I know skin contact with wine if too long, you get the tannins and it gets bitter and whatever. So as soon as it was where I wanted it, it was time to take it off.
Favorite beers that you've produced in the last 14, let's say 24 months. Because there's been some phenomenalness beers, like super good beers. I'm going to assume that you're going to steer towards the Pilsners.
Simple Things. That's it.
So let's go outside of Simple Things.
Yeah.
Favorite beers that you've produced in the last 2 years?
I think the Route beer, that smoked beer that I was talking about earlier, that's up there for sure. I'll lean probably towards lagers because I love a good lager. That's a really good question.
What's your favorite IPA that you've done? Because there's been some really good ones, man. I think back like 24 months ago when Towers and Trains came out, and that was like such a good beer that I haven't had before. And then even more recently, what was that one that you had at the 5-year party? No.
Oomph was good.
Really good, but that's dangerous.
It was
Wasn't that
you
like
were drinking.
7.5 or 8%?
Probably 8%.
Yeah.
They're my
No,
favorite.
the other one.
Yeah.
It
one
wasn't
was
Vibrant Things. It was the other one. At that tent over there.
Meantime?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That beer is phenomenal.
Yeah.
For
and
me,
so
because I
that
love
chef
those beers.
making that beer,
Yeah.
he came out with one called Win-Win.
I love Win-Win.
Yeah,
That's a good
that one
beer.
was phenomenal. I think that's his best, I'll say.
That's his best.
I would think so. Yeah. I mean, for me, he might agree too. He really liked that too. And so
I don't know if I know Chef. I'm sure I've like walked by him and said hello.
you probably have, but yeah, you should introduce yourself next time you're in, or I'll introduce you, I guess.
Okay.
IPAs, I would say that.
If there's a favorite Eric IPA, would it be Win-Win?
Yeah, I think so.
Wow.
What about
Towers and Trains
Rollerblade was pretty good too.
Yeah, definitely. Like
They're so different,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Towers and Trains has a special place in my, like, I like to say that's what got me my job. Because I brewed a little homebrew batch at Steel and Oak right when I started. And that was, it was the original iteration of that. We've tweaked it since then.
Mm-hmm.
And I brewed 20 liters. I stayed after work one day, brewed it, and then we were serving it on the secret tap. Just giving it to regulars. And
Can that come back?
Towers and Trains?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's coming back.
It is?
Yeah. Yeah. We do that every once in a while.
That was a really good beer.
We'll do it like a couple times a year, basically. That's kind of one of those.
Has it been back this year? I don't think it's been back in 2019. I haven't seen it.
Maybe not. Either late last year or early this year. I don't remember the
Okay.
schedule exactly, but yeah. Or it's coming back in the fall sometime.
What was the name of the Earl Grey IPA?
That's the one.
That's
Towers
it?
and Trains. Yeah.
Wasn't that a black label?
Yeah.
Was it black?
Black Label, Earl Grey IPA.
All right. Well, that's the one I'm thinking of.
Wow.
That was super good. That was when, to me, Steel and Oak took a turn.
Yeah.
And again, for my personal palate, in the right direction. Like, man, I'm so pumped with what Steel and Oak is doing right now.
What was the Japanese hazy that you guys did with the Japanese name?
Are you thinking Kotuku?
Yeah, Kotuku.
Okay.
That's what got me on.
It's
That's
that's
the
a
great
Maori.
label.
That was
Maori, yeah.
delicious. Maori?
That one, yeah.
Right? Had a gray
Yeah, gray label.
yeah.
Um,
Just remember the colors. For some reason. I don't know why I keep saying colors.
yeah, that one, that's a good, yeah, pale ale. Like, I mean, the line between a pale ale and IPA is hard to really define, but
Can
yeah.
you define that?
No, not at all.
Good talk. No.
Well, we'll be on. We found that there's been some beers. Now we just call everything an IPA because it sells better, and that's where I get
That's
annoyed
crazy.
at the market because it's just like if it's let's call it 5.5%.
Yeah.
You could call it either an IPA or a pale ale,
I assumed
And
it was
then-
the hop level. No?
but you can get a really hoppy pale ale.
Yeah.
And
you're right.
now we've just found that an IPA sells better, and that's where I get annoyed because it's not that people like the beer better. It's just they're buying it because it says IPA, they're going to buy it. If you like it better, that's great. Like that, I have no issue with. But if you're buying it just because it's an IPA. I mean, we didn't have an IPA for years at Steel Oak. Now we basically always have one, or at least one. But people would come in, not look at the menu, and just say, "I'll get your IPA." And I'd be just like, "Well, we don't have an IPA. Like, did you not look at the menu? You just assume that you want the IPA when you've never tried anything else."
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
What is the education process like in those situations?
I don't work the tasting room because I get mad at people. I don't have patience for people.
You're like, here's the Pilsner. You're going to drink that
we
and
used
you're going to enjoy
because
it.
we had our ESB and it was hoppy enough for a lot of people. You're like, well, try this. And there's definitely people willing to change, but there's some people like, no, I'm an IPA drinker. They're not a craft beer drinker. They're an IPA drinker.
Just for the
and
name.
And there's a difference there for sure. The people that will just drink that.
What is it in their head that they're so attached to IPA? Like just the wording IPA.
I don't know.
They think it's bitter. Because
I think
traditionally it's a bitter beer, right?
Yeah, and it's full of flavor. So
Right.
they know it's just full of flavor. And so you get into craft beer and you're like, oh yeah, I want flavor. Well, what's the most flavor? Basically an IPA or a stout or like an imperial stout or something like that. And so those are the two beers that people will drink at first. And I'm guilty of it to an extent. When I first got into home brewing, I was making beers that were full of flavor. And that's it. And so people just assume that that's what they want. They're getting away from the macro lagers that have no flavor and going to the most flavor you can get. And then you kind of slowly, hopefully work your way back and actually appreciate
Let's say someone comes in the tasting room, you're there. Just say you're out there. Everyone knows your face because you're the head brewer of Steel Oak. And they say, I don't like lagers because they have no flavor. What's your response?
I mean, you give them a
And let's
Baltic
say you're
porter.
not talking to a customer.
Yeah.
Because I want to hear your actual response. I know if you're talking to a customer, it's a bit filtered.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Yeah.
it's educational, but you're also like trying to please them.
I mean, part of it is like, a Baltic porter is a lager and it's just as full flavored as whatever porter you're thinking of. But it's a lager. If you don't want a Hell's lager that is kind of just a light lager, sure, that's up to you if that's not what you want. But to say I don't like lagers means you don't know what you're talking about. I see that right away. It's like if you say blanket statement, I don't like lagers.
Yeah.
You don't know if you like beer in general, but you don't like lagers, you don't know what you're talking about.
When all the IPAs were doing that big hoppy double, triple, whatever IPAs, it's so many IBUs that just burn your tongue as they go down. That was my response, was like, I'm not a big IPA fan, but when you step back and look at the broad spectrum of IPAs, it's just one little category, right?
Yeah.
At the end. That just is overhopped, hiding all the flavor. It's just bitter. And I've learned that now through educating myself and trying a bunch of beers.
Yeah. Oh, and that's totally it. People like, I don't blame people for not knowing. Like, I don't expect people to know as much about beer as I do. And that's because that's not realistic. I don't know anything about any other random topic. And so I'm hoping people can kind of guide me in something that I kind of like, but know nothing about.
Totally.
Whiskey, for example. Like, I don't know. I know I like whiskey, but that's it. Kind of. And so
that is another podcast, buddy. We could talk all day about that.
Yeah. But like, I can't tell you the differences between different places of Scotland, and I don't know. So I'm hoping somebody educates me, but I also don't want to be ignorant and just say like, oh, well, no, Scotch is the way to go and Irish whiskey is terrible, because I'm sure there's some delicious Irish whiskey out there.
I'm not going to call out our parents' generation, but I'm slightly going to. I feel like whatever we're called, millennials, whatever the fuck the term is, I feel like we're pretty open-minded.
I hope so.
I feel like we are, though.
Nah,
and I
there's
feel
enough
like,
assholes out there that aren't.
yeah, there are, of course. Any generation's going to have that. Any population. But I feel like the older people, and this is more specifically directed at my dad, they're just so close-minded. They work on this little fucking time scale, and it's so crazy. Like, even in general with beer, like I'll bring a 6-pack of, and I try to tone it down for him. I'll bring like a red truck lager. Like I'm toning it down. This is kind of like a relaxed, easy drinking beer. Be like, no. Is there Molson Canadian in the fridge? Yeah, I'm gonna have that.
Always, eh?
Oh my god, it's so painful for me.
Because he's not a beer drinker. He's a Molson Canadian
No,
drinker.
this is a guy that.
That's it. Like, that's...
I just think he. And I'm talking about him and relating it to his whole generation, so maybe that's slightly unfair. But it's just like the mindset of being so close-minded.
But like, my girlfriend's dad will only touch Budweiser, eh?
It's
Nothing else ever.
But he's in his mid-50s.
Yeah.
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 There it is. Right there.
Yeah. And it's marketing. They've done an amazing job marketing. And I think that's a big difference with craft beer. Once people are into craft beer, they're not a Steel and Oak drinker. They're not
right.
Which is why the industry is what it is. And we can be friends with our competition because we know our customers aren't going to be loyal to us the way customers were loyal to Molson or Bud or Coors or whatever.
I feel a bit like it goes across different industries though. Like for us, we don't really give a shit if our shoes or socks are like Nike or Adidas or whatever. It's like, I don't know, that looks pretty good. It feels the same as that one, but it's on sale. It's $20 cheaper. Maybe we're just cheap. I don't know. But whereas the old school people are just going, they're like, yeah, I'll take the new pair of Nikes. I feel like it goes across different industries.
Yeah, probably.
Maybe it is marketing because we have access to so many different things now with social media and internet and all that stuff. Whereas back in the day, it was all TV ads that anyone ever saw.
Yeah.
And who can afford TV ads is Budweiser and Nike, right? Just big companies.
Big guys.
Anyway, maybe Steel and Oak should do some TV ads. No, they should definitely not because no one watches TV ads.
We don't pay for marketing. That's basically a thing. I think the most we've ever paid is paying a little bit to be at the curling club in New West. Get our logo on the ice there, but that's like supporting the community. They support us, and that's about it. That's not big money or anything.
You know what the next sponsorship is going to be?
No.
Podcast.
Yeah, we'll bring you some beer every once in a while.
That's all I'm asking for. Every podcast will talk about your beer. You give me a 4-pack of beer, there you go.
Okay.
It's a win-win.
All right. You already come by. Or Jamie can grab you some beer.
Yeah, I'd pay for it though. Anyway, Eric, thanks a lot, man. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks.
That was more educational than I anticipated, but I'm excited about it.
I don't know what I was talking about half the time. So.
Carl, did you learn something about beer today?
Yes, quite a bit.
Name your top best thing you learned.
Oh, it's so much trial and error. Like you gotta taste every step, essentially.
It's science, man.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. #science. We out.